Oh, I tripped. Welcome to the Personality Kitchen. Today we are talking about how does your personality type, your Myers-Briggs personality type, change over time. Like a stew simmering on the stove. This connection is so tenuous. Now look, let me make it clear from the get-go. Your type does not change to a different type over time. It's not like you're an ENTJ and then over time you become an INTJ. That's not what I'm talking about. But each type will have a different way of developing based on their preferences, based on their cognitive functions, and we're gonna get all into that today, talking about each type and what you can expect throughout life. Hey, what about me? Oh, and today it looks like we're joined by Chip, who today is literally a bowl of tortilla chips. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of weird. Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing right now. Now let us start shaking and baking. Let's start type development over time. Okay, so my opinion and the opinion of many people who are into personality type is that your Myers-Briggs type is something that you were born with. There are actually a lot of scientific studies that show that personality is in large part genetic. So it would make sense that MBTI, assuming it is true and valid, could also be genetic. So you're born with your type. You've got all 4 cognitive functions. You've got thinking, feeling, intuition, and sensing. And even though your type prefers 2 of those, when you're a kid, you're just kind of like using them all indiscriminately, randomly. So a little INTJ kid is also going to be using their feeling and their sensing a lot. At least until a point in life where the kid realizes, oh, dog, my dominant function is where it's at. It's sort of like the kid discovers, oh, this is my personality type. Now, I could go through a rundown of the dominant functions, but I feel like I've done that a lot before. So I would suggest checking out this video in the card above my head to get a taste for all of that. Whoa. Hey, you said taste. And you're dressed like a chef. That's pretty funny. Right? Yeah, that's true. Then at some point in childhood, we discover that we have a second cognitive function that we can use that is a great complement to our dominant one. So by sometime in adolescence, you have that pairing in the middle of your type. If you're an NF type, you've realized intuition and feeling together, that's the way to go. If you're an ST type, you realize sensing and thinking, that's the way to go. Let me use just those 2 things. Of course, the exception here is if for some reason you have not developed properly and you are unhealthy. I talked about that in my video last week. You can check that out in the card above my head. Whoa! Where's that fire even coming from? I don't know. It's just the thing I do. It doesn't make a lot of sense. In the second part of the video, we're gonna talk about what happens after that, once you come out of adolescence into adulthood and you start to confront and develop your non-preferred side. Join me there. Hey Chip, have you seen any guacamole around? I don't, why are you asking me a question like that? Oh, no reason. Just wondering. Okay, welcome back to part 2. So up to this point, we've talked about healthy type development to adulthood, basically, where you have realized what your type is all about. And really the thing there is you trust and feel responsible for those functions. So for example, an ISFJ is like, okay, the sensing and feeling, I can do that. I trust it. I am responsible for that. But the NT side of things, the intuition and the thinking, nah, let's not worry about that. But once you get into early adulthood, and you know, it's different for everyone, you start to discover your third function there is something that actually, this could be useful. Maybe I should take some responsibility for this part of my personality, even though my whole life I've gotten by just doing my preferences, just doing those 2 things, maybe I can add in this third thing every once in a while. So you get the IP types, and they realize at some point in early adulthood, oh man, I keep going from thing to thing. I like to keep my options open, but maybe it would be a good thing if I kind of like narrowed things down, got things settled. For the INFP and INTP, it will be like in the sensory world. How do I like just get my life physically in order? How do I, write a grocery list? And for the ISFP and ISTP, it will be an intuitive kind of organization. How can I start to project out into the future? How can I start to find the connections and the meanings within my life and really start to narrow that down? For the EJ types, they kind of do the opposite. They have been organized up to this point in their life. They've been able to keep things limited, and they are always looking for a conclusion and to have things settled. And they start to realize once they reach adulthood, oh, actually, maybe it's good sometimes to keep my options a little bit more open, to go a bit more spontaneously and not be so rigidly stuck with a plan. So the ESTJ and ESFJ will realize, oh man, it's actually good to look out at all the different possibilities of the future and to like be a little bit more open to new concepts, new ways of doing things that I didn't think of before. And the ENTJ and ENFJ are like, okay, I actually should kind of like own what's happening right now and how do I deal with things as they pop up and how do I take in new information and not just rely on this big future plan I have. The EP types generally around this time will start to discover, oh man, I've been a little bit selfish up to this point, and maybe it will serve me and everyone else if I start to like consider what other people think is good, what other people think is logical. So the ENTP and ESTP will be like, oh, extroverted feeling, what everyone else thinks is good, what's gonna make everyone else happy, maybe I should like consider that. And the ENFP and ESFP will realize, oh, extroverted thinking, what's gonna work for everyone else? How do I work with other people to get stuff done? That's important. Life is not all about just what I think is cool. The IJs, on the other hand, at this time of life, might be discovering the opposite thing. They'll be like, actually, maybe I should just be a little more selfish and do what I want to do and not always be seeking out the approval and validation of others. The ISTJ and INTJ are going to tap more into their introverted feeling and be like, okay, what do I value? What do I think is important? Let me go a little bit more in that direction. The ISFJ and INFJ are going to be like, okay, I gotta pick what I wanna work on, what I think is logical for me, and I'm just gonna have to go after that, even if it makes other people unhappy. In part 3 of this video, we're gonna look at what happens beyond that. It's not something that everyone gets to, but it's actually probably the most important part of type development. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back. How's it going over there, Chip? I think I'm getting kind of stale sitting here. That is true on a couple different levels, Chip. Okay, so now the last ultimate step of type development. This can happen almost at any point after the last one, and honestly, for some people, it never happens. They never develop their type this far. And this is the point at which you take responsibility for your inferior function, and this is one of the hardest things to do. Now, I just want to clarify, this doesn't mean you start to use your inferior function, because you have been using your inferior function all along. Like you couldn't really operate as a human being unless you were able to use it every once in a while at least. But just because you use it doesn't mean you feel responsibility for it. The EJs, they are gonna struggle with being themselves, standing up for themselves, doing what they wanna do. They are slaves, and they've been slaves in their whole life up to this point to everyone else, what everyone else wants to do. The EJs feel like they need permission. They can't do anything unless other people are like, thumbs up, do it. So that's the struggle for the EJs. How do I make decisions for myself without validation and also be okay with that and not blame everyone else that they didn't give me the thumbs up? The ENTJ and ESTJ are gonna struggle with, what do I think is good? What are my priorities and how do I make decisions based off of that? The ENFJ and ESFJ are going to struggle with, how do I do what I think is logical? For the EP types, this stage of development, what they've got to do is take responsibility for limiting things down, narrowing down all those possibilities. The EPs love to just keep their options open all the time, never get things settled down, and it's so hard for them, it feels so wrong to just be like, okay, I gotta pick one thing and that's it. The ENTP and ENFP need to own the organization of the sensory world. How do I get myself organized and like make a checklist for things and not just jump into it without any preparation? I can't leave it for someone else to do. I can't just sort of grumble and complain about it. I have to take it on. The ESFP and ESTP, they need to start realizing I am responsible for planning out into the future, for figuring out what my pathway in life is, and perhaps one of the most existentially frightening things is they are going to have to be like, what does my life mean? What does it all mean? Everything that's going on, how do I make sense of it? I have to understand the why behind my life. So for the IP types, this last stage of development is going to be all about how do I embrace others and their perspectives? How do I realize that I am not the center of everything? I am not the final decision maker for everything. And it feels very wrong for IP types to accept responsibility for, okay, I've got to do what is going to be valued by everyone else. That would be for the INTP and ISTP. Or I've got to do what is going to work with everyone else. What everyone else thinks needs to be done, how can I work with them? That would be for the INFP and ISFP. And then the IJ types. The IJs just have blinders on. They have a limited way of seeing the world, and it's tough for them to then open it up and realize, okay, I've got to embrace all of the different options, all of the possibilities, all of the things that are happening. I can't just ignore them and try to get around them. Just because I have blinders on does not mean those things go away. It just means that they cause a ton of problems for everyone else while I'm ignoring them. The IJs also have to realize just because they've got this specific weird thing that they want things to be like, life is not going to be like that. Like they can't just ignore how things are changing in the moment. The ISFJ and ISTJ, they need to realize, oh, there are more options, there are more possibilities than what I have paid attention to, and they might be very different from everything I've been doing all along, but I've got to look at them. I've got to take them into consideration. Meanwhile, the INFJ and INTJ have to embrace the same thing, but in the sensory world. There are all these things out there that I need to pay attention to. I can't just ignore them and try to get around them intuitively, which is what they've been doing their whole lives. Like, they've got to realize that there are just a lot of different things and different experiences out there that can be good, that can be useful. They have to sort of realize the intuition, like the imagination and all the tricks they're trying to do to jump ahead and not have to deal with the real world. That is all fake. That is not real. What is real is right here, right now. That is like the big lesson that the INTJ and INFJ will have to learn at some point. And if they don't, they're gonna keep having these issues where the real world comes out of nowhere and kicks them in the butt. Yeah, just like you've ignored me for most of the video. I kind of forgot you were there, Chip. But you know what? Thanks for watching. Check out this video here about healthy versus unhealthy types if you haven't seen it already. Or the playlist, the whole playlist right here. Dang. Until next time, stay cool and attractive.